TUC and NSC don dey threa ten say dem wan go strike for states wey never gree implement the 70,000 naira minimum wage. Dem say some states dey negligent, dem no dey wan implement the 70,000 naira minimum wage wey federal government approve despite the current economic crisis wey dey rock the nation.
Despite assurances from some state governors regarding the progress on the new national minimum wage of 70,000 naira, the Nigeria Labour Congress has taken a firm stance, initiating nationwide industrial actions due to the non-compliance by those governors. The affected states include Abia, Akwa Ibom, Ebonyi, Ekiti, Enugu states. Other states such as Imo, Nasarawa, Kaduna, FCT, Abuja are also included. This situation has led to disruptions across various sectors, including air, road and maritime transport, utilities, government services, business operations and healthcare services are also grounded as a result of this industrial actions across the states. Joining us now via Zoom from Lagos is Magnus Onyibe. He's a public policy analyst and a democracy advocate. We thank you very much for joining us this morning. Talking about this battle initiated between or by NLC in the states, what do you make of the back and forth, the rationale for this move by the labor unions?
Good morning and thank you for having me. I think, it's a pity that we're coming back to this bind again. I, would have expected, as NLC does, that the 14 states would comply. They should find a way around it. I know that funds are tight, but we're also aware that a lot of money have been going to state governments arising from the removal of subsidy of petrol and more money to be shared. So those states need to prioritize payment of this minimum wage to workers, because they are actually the reason why they exist. They are the ones who elect them, unquote. They should be able to respond to their needs. It's a binding law. It's a contract, that the federal government signed, and it was well debated and agreed upon. These 14 states are recalcitrant. They shouldn't be.
So my own concern here, 14 states plus the FCT, my own concern here is this: why we have these states coming on to announce a new minimum wage, some higher than the others, many of them above 70,000 naira, some 80,000, some 85,000, and without having that willingness to pay now, rather than waiting for consultation and waiting till January to begin to pay bills. Are these states are they financially viable?
Yes,
some of these states we see they just go to government, the federal government, cap in hand for some funds and all of that. Are these actually viable states?
That's the problem. That's the challenge we have in Nigeria, and of course, I'm sure you are aware that they're even asking for more states creation. Some states are not viable, and obviously, this demonstrates these 14 states that have not been able to pay are actually not really viable, and maybe their leaders are not creative enough to find avenues to raise money. And they should actually, if they are innovative, creative, and dynamic. But most importantly, I would feel that, they should prioritize paying this minimum wage, because I don't say, okay, if you say that they are unviable or they lack resources, is there any sacrifice they have made? Have they reduced the convoy of vehicles being used by each of the governors or those in government? Have they removed or reduced any perks that they used to get? Have they stopped hiring private jet to go to Abuja? They have to make sacrifices, because the people are very important. They ought to really attend to them.
So if you're talking about, excuse me, Kemi, if you're talking about reducing cost of governance, do you expect that this will happen, looking at the fact that they are used to all of these things from the get-go? And the governor is not alone in all of this. He has the State House of Assembly that will also legislate on these things. If he has to reduce cost of governance, he has to reduce also cost of governance in the State House of Assembly as well. Do you think this will happen?
Absolutely. You know, it's only pressures like this that can make it happen. That's what the democracy that we practice is about. The people will make their demand, and when they put pressure on government, government will sit up. And, you know, it's really not nice that the generality of Nigerians have to face these inconveniences. You know, but that's what they need to do. They have to put pressure on government. I'm not just speaking about governors, actually. Government as a whole, the three branches, especially the two main branches, the executive and the legislative arm. Because as I can see right now, I don't see any sacrifices that they have made. They have not reduced their salaries or their PECs. They've not, you know, done anything to show that they are concerned about the citizens of their states. So, you know, they need to do more than they're doing right now. And if Labour does not actually challenge them vigorously as they're doing, they may just think they can get away with it. So Labour ought to do this, but it's going to inconvenience people. But this is what democracy is about. This is what democracy is about. There has to be pressure. But again, my advice to NLC is that they have to find other ways of trying to mitigate these challenges. You know, we're aware of inflation at or in excess of 34%, and we know that workers are feeling the pain, but they have to find other ways. For instance, there's something called bi-monthly salary payment. That's operated in America, for instance, or UK. In Nigeria, we do 30 days make a pay. So, and if you receive your salary and you have to wait for another 1 month, and inflation goes up and down these days. In fact, if you buy a cup of tea, by the time you go back to buy the tea, the price has changed. So, you know, if you have salary payments in 2 weeks, you may be able to manage the challenges and the changes. So NLC should look at issues like that as a way of trying to make the workers more comfortable. You know, there are things that they have to examine, look at critically, and see the cost-benefit effect, and see if they can also propose such things, not just to increase salary or to challenge government. They have to be more creative, both sides.
Right. Some states are, you know, reacting defensively to the fact that their domains have been shut down by the labor union, saying that, for example, now Kaduna State is saying it's not the failure, or its failure at this time is not exactly about the new national minimum wage, but basically fine-tuning the payment modalities, the implementation, you know, and all of that, the computerization, the adjustments in salaries and all of that. How tenable is this defense, first off? And look, let's also look at states such as Cross River State, Ebonyi State, I should say. Francis Nwuforom, who is also talking tough, saying he gives striking workers in his state 72 hours to resume their duty posts, or they will be replaced. How does this, you know, add value to the controversy at hand?
It doesn't at all. You know, let's take Wifuru, for instance. I believe, you know, that his approach, if it's correct that he made that statement, is rascality. He has responsibility. It's a binding contract that the federal government entered along with the states. They debated it and came to that agreement. If they are dealing with the issues that you mentioned, like from Kaduna State, for instance, about the changeover, they should engage workers and carry them along, let them know what's going on. But, you know, just coming up with that excuse is not good enough. States that are implementing it were given the order at the same time, and they have been able to implement. So why are these 14 lagging? It's the same challenges that they face. They have payroll issues, they have computerization and stuff like that to deal with. These states that are recalcitrant are not up and doing. It just reflects their inefficiency, if that is the case. You know, it's binding. We all know how things are right now. It took a long time to come to 70,000 naira as minimum wage. And, you know, so it shouldn't be further delayed. And, you know, they shouldn't inconvenience the rest of us in society. Because when these labor people engage in these things, you know, services are disrupted and people are inconvenienced. You know, I don't think that is fair. So these state governments have to take these things up and deal with them in more strategic and serious ways. Like I said, there are other options. apart from salary increase. They should look, if you have bi-monthly payment, for instance, it means in a year you have 26 payments, and they will probably be specific periods, like 1st of January and 15th. And people will receive their salaries more frequently. If they do, they'll be able to deal with the ups and downs in the economy right now. Those are things they should look at. They should be innovative. They shouldn't just be stuck in one way. For the entire lifetime of Nigeria, we have been doing 30 days, make a pay. Let them find more innovative ways and look at how the people can benefit. We have to be dynamic. We don't have to be fixated and standing, on one spot and going on strike all the time.
All right. So, in as much as we are going to be talking about the state government inefficiency in paying the minimum wage, the 14 state plus FCT, let's also talk about the fact that some states, like you have said, are not viable, and the governors might be concerned about capital projects that will fail if they have to start paying immediately the minimum wage.
I should think, as I said earlier, what sacrifice are they making? Why should it be capital projects that will fail? Why would it not be the extraordinary perks that they are enjoying now that should be removed? As you mentioned earlier, cost of governance. They should look critically at the cost of governance and see what they can do about it. Reduce the excesses. Definitely, there's corruption. Definitely, there's wasteful spending. Let them first of all get rid of those ones before they think of capital projects being compromised. That's it. They just have to put on their thinking cap. Both sides, both the governors, state governments, and NLC, they have to find ways around this thing so that we don't, get back to this point all the time, strike every day. The federal government has done well enough to actually engage them, and they've been able to come out with a structure which, is binding, to all the states. These 14 states have to implement these measures. And as I said earlier, it's a reflection of the unviability of the states. But despite that, some people are asking for more states, in Nigeria right now. So it's something that they really need to do. They have to put on their creative caps, and think of how to get out of this bind.
Right, and perhaps to help with this this argument, one could also ask the question as to engagements on the new minimum wage it came with wide consultations, even beyond the presidency, the NLC, and the private sector. The Governors Forum also they were also featuring prominently at the time. They spoke, they were loud, on this before everybody finally agreed on the new national minimum wage of 70,000 naira.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes, so it behoves of governors through Governors Forum, to actually make sure that their members comply. They should find a mechanism, a way of getting them to comply and save the face of governors. Because right now it's a blight on governors. Because the people, NLC is actually justifiably saying that they have been betrayed, that this was an agreement that, was agreed, that was discussed, and they all appended their signature to it finally when they agreed on 70,000 naira. Some states, as you mentioned earlier, are paying much more. They are more viable, obviously. But before they reach 70, I think, when the NLC was asking for more money, some of these states said they couldn't, but when they eventually arrived at 70, it was acceptable. So having accepted it, they should have made preparations to make sure that these obligations are met. That they're not doing so is not a good commentary on their leadership. And, it will actually also affect them. I know that, people say in Nigeria, votes don't count, but it would affect them because the people in those states are disaffected. I believe that states, that governors of states that are seeking re-election or will be seeking re-election soon must be compliant. Otherwise, there will be consequences. So it really behoves of these state governors to find a way. They just have to cut costs somewhere else. They have to look for the money, and make sure that workers are paid, especially as the Yuletide is coming. People are really under pressure.
Right. You've spoken of options that governors can do, proffering the popular argument of reducing the cost of governance, at state level. But then let's also look at another option, or will I say low-hanging fruits that governors are exploiting or using at this time. Because in terms of impact, how would you even assess the impact of this strike? Because 14 states, yes, in the news that have not complied, quote and unquote. But in terms of impact, how many states indeed carried out, or how widespread was this industrial action? We understand that some states, such as Zamfara, didn't join in the strike, or your state as well is also in the news. And talking about options that you said earlier on, many of the civil servants in the states that did not record industrial action said there's already some form of agreement between them and the governors that the new minimum wage will be implemented at a given time. And so what continued as usual? So what happens now? How does this, help the argument of implementation of minimum wage in those states?
I think what the state governors should do, and as you just referenced, some of them, some states, are not witnessing the strike action right now. I believe that those states have engaged the labor unions and they've given them some guarantees, and stuff like that. But the action of the Ebonyi State Governor, threatening to sack workers who go on strike, is really out of order. They should engage them. We don't want strike. Nobody wants strike. People don't want services to be disrupted. Nigerians are going through pains already. So, these people should not make them go through more pains. So what they need to do is to engage them. If they have plans to implement it from January, they should give them guarantees and lay out the plans that they have. And also agree with them that they're going to pay them the backlog, one way or the other. I believe the NLC people are human beings. They are reasonable people, and so when they negotiate, they'll be able to come to some kind of agreement, to a yes, to what they intend to do. But I believe that they need to be fully briefed. So the state governors that haven't paid right now need to step up their communication platforms, and communicate with the NLC and let them know what they're doing, lay out the plans, and give them assurances that they can take away to their members so that this strike action will stop. But threatening them, is out of order. I also believe that the NLC will be reasonable enough not to go the extreme way of going to shut down electricity or going to block airports and stuff like that cause untold hardship to ordinary Nigerians who are just trying to keep their heads above waters. So there should be a common ground. The state governors have to engage NLC and they have to give them some guarantees. And this thing has to be with some assurances, some facts and figures showing that they are working. Those who have issues with technology that have not been able to cut over should explain to them, and NLC people have experts who will be able to determine these things. And as I said, they have to put on their thinking cap. They have to get out of the box and think outside of the box. Like I just said, bi-monthly payment of salary is a serious alternative that they should consider. It's not going on strike all the time for salary increase. How frequent the salaries get to the people should matter, especially in these days of galloping inflation. It's something that has not been considered for a very long time, but it's not a low-hanging fruit because they have to cut over. There has to be technology issues and whatever. And the challenge to the state government would be that they may have cash flow issue, but they have regular income coming from the federation account. The other challenge is that instead of monthly, 12 months, they may have to make payment 26 times. So that may also be an issue. But they can work on this. They can experiment it. And see if that works better than the other. But because people need money more frequently because of inflation right now.
So if the NLC is to move with this alternative, what other ways do you think they can actually push home their demands, apart from the one you just mentioned, the bi-monthly payment and strike action? What other ways can the NLC explore to get to these governors to pay this minimum wage?
No other ways, unfortunately. You know, they just, it has to be pressure on the state governments, you know, to fulfill their obligations. They've gone to court, you know, and the courts have ruled, you know, and you know, in Nigeria we have the culture of not complying with court orders. So you know that is not a viable option for the state governments. You know, we are just facing the issue of tax reforms right now. I am aware, you know, that a state like a Nasarawa state, for instance, receives maybe like you know, 4 or some miserable amount of money from VAT because there are no industries there. Situations like this have to compel them. Since states are going to be keeping 60% of it, there are vast resources in Nasarawa State, for instance. It's a citrus belt. In the United States of America, Florida area is citrus belt. That's where all the orange juice, all the juices that you have in America, most of them come from there. The same thing applies to Nasarawa State. If you travel from Abuja through Nasarawa State to Benue State, you will see a lot of wasting resources. Oranges, mango, all sorts of things are just wasting there. Why would there not be industries processing those things? And when those industries are there, they will pay VAT. And now the state government can keep the money. That same Nasarawa State, for instance, has lithium. Why are they not going out of their way to drive companies from South Africa, from Australia, from wherever, to go and begin to explore those
But they've been embarking on business trips with the president, talking to companies from different countries to come into Nigeria. Isn't that something that we're looking at?
Yes, so it's complementary, you know, so that's what I'm saying. They should, you know, the states as well, you know, like I'm aware from reading from the papers that a state like Enugu State, for instance, is very aggressive in trying to go and get organizations to come and, you know, and work there and create businesses that will pay taxes. The same thing should apply to Zamfara State, where they have gold and stuff like that. Right now, most of these resources we are talking about have been explored or exploited informally. So it's not on record. But if they come up with industries processing those things, they'll be able to earn income that will, you know, help them be able to pay the minimum wage. So this tax reform is an energizer. It's a booster. It's a drive. It's something that would that should trigger a rush for state governors to encourage the setting up of industries that will generate income for them, as against what obtains right now. You put up a signboard in anywhere you want to start business. Even before you set up the business, tax people are already chasing you, and they discourage it and you move somewhere else. In the United States of America, for instance, Tesla is coated, is wood. All right? You know, because the state governments want those businesses set up there so that they can generate income, they can earn VAT and stuff like that. In Nigeria, not many state governments are aware of that, are chasing companies to come and set up shop in their place so that they'll be able to pay salaries and they'll be able to earn incomes. These tax reforms will also help that, you know, states will begin to generate more income, because apart from Lagos State, apart from Ogun State, apart from the Niger Delta states where they have oil and a bit of FCT, no state is generating funds internally because there are no industries there. And that's why there's high employment. Everybody wants to work in government because there are no industries. That's all, unlike in the past. So we should, it's all inclusive. Tax reforms, minimum wage, you know, capacity or ability for state governments to pay, they all come together, you know, and we should look at those things holistically and say that one dovetails into the other and one drives to the other, one reinforces the other and stuff like that, you know, but they're not saying it as such. So people are feeling, you know, that this is a threat to this, is a threat to that. No, it's a call to action for people to wake up and begin to find ways to make their state more viable and sustainable.
And talking about the enhancing the viability of states, How do you see that really working under the present political arrangement? Or do you also, recommend that in terms of power devolution, this should also be given more room, perhaps through a constitutional amendment? Because what we are seeing now is more of revenue sharing. In fact, talking about the tax bills, that is it. But in terms of how they can further generate revenue in their respective states to meet with all these their financial implications and enhance the development of those states, can all that happen under the present structure?
Under the present structure, it can happen, but it can be further enhanced. Some state governments are going ahead to do ease of doing business. Okay, once you create ease of doing business, that you have a one-stop shop where if you want to register a company, the state is there to facilitate, to help you, and not to impede you. It will. I mentioned the states like Enugu, for instance, based on what I'm reading. I've not been there. I don't know the governor, but they seem to be doing the right thing, chasing investors to come and set up shop. All right. So other states can do it, and also the new concept introduced by the federal government, giving LGAs autonomy. It also means that LGAs, 774 LGAs will become locus of business. LGA chairmen are now empowered to look for organizations, companies that will come and explore resources that are available or endemic in their areas, in their domain. So this will create activities, will boost the economy, and stuff like that. So there's a cocktail of things that should come together that would make this work. For instance, as I mentioned, the case of Enugu State and maybe Lagos State especially, and Ogun State, governors should begin to woo investors. They should not. They create, enabling environment. Create incentives, to promote these things. That's the only way we can get out of this quagmire. But sitting down and waiting for FAC every month is what has become the custom, and the governors have become accustomed to it. So now when you challenge them to say, bring something to the table, they are feeling threatened. No, that should be, the governor should be able to look at how it's going to get the resources in the state to be able to help the people, especially now that there's an incentive that 60% of whatever we generate but can be retained in your state. So it's only 40 that goes to government or something like that. It's an incentive. So these are changes that are coming up in the system, that are actually part of what people were thinking originally should be a review of the Constitution in a holistic form, which has not happened. I mean, if you remember what happened to the Petroleum Industry Act, it took over like 20 years for it to materialize because they wanted to do everything at the same time. But now it looks like this government is doing it in piecemeal. So these changes are coming together, and there'll be different motivation, there'll be different incentive, and people will be driven to become more productive than just being consumers, waiting for fat money for everybody to share. And they now live in luxury, and the people who live in penury. The governors of these 14 states should show that they are making sacrifices. The people should see that they are making sacrifices. It's not enough for them to say they don't have money to pay when their lifestyles haven't changed for the better, when they are still living extravagantly, when they have not cut down the security vote of the governor, when, a lot of things, the people should start asking them questions. It's not enough to say they don't have enough resources to pay. They should tell them the sacrifices that they have made so that the people would buy into it, be carried along, and feel that their leaders are responsible.
The terminal manager of the Putaka depot of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, reportedly told journalists that the tanker drivers have refused to load products despite the availability of petroleum products at the depot. He says the depot has 11 loading arms that have the capacity to load a minimum of 15 trucks in 15 minutes. But oil and gas industry expert Maurice Ibe told Rise News that some modalities need to be completed before products can be loaded from the depot, while blaming the real reason that the drivers are refusing to load products on the fact that the Port Harcourt refinery was blending petroleum products instead of refining. Now, when contacted by Rise News, the factional petroleum tanker drivers branch of the Nigerian Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, led by its national chairman, Lucky Osesua, confirmed that his members are currently loading petroleum products at the Port Harcourt refinery. Now, our guest here in the studio with us, Festus Osifo, is also the president of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria. So we just wanted to get your thoughts on this developments coming in.
First, Nigerians, we have every reason to doubt government. We have every reason to question, these assertions from government because over the years, they've actually let us down. So having said that, for us in Pengasan, it's part of what we are going to address tomorrow in our National Executive Council meeting. Really, from our checks, Port Harcourt Refinery is actually working. But let me explain this. In crude production, in petroleum product production, you take the crude and you pass the crude into what they call a CDU, the crude distillating unit. So it is actually that unit that is going to bring different products. So that unit today, as we speak, is working. The CDU is working. So when you pass the crude into the CDU, then it's going to give you what we call kerosene, DPK. It's going to give you what we call ATK, the aviation fuel. It's going to give you AGO, the diesel. It's also going to give you naphtha. So that is that distillating unit. So that unit is working. So what that means is that you pass the crude into that unit, you have these products. But the old Port Harcourt refinery was not designed to produce aviation fuel. So you are going to have these three principal products: the naphtha, the AGO, as well as the DPK. So now that naphtha, normally, you are supposed to now pass it into what they call the reformate unit. So as we speak today, that reformate unit is not actually working. We must disclose this to Nigerians. So what is now happening at the moment is that you are going to now take that naphtha. So they will now bring in what they call crack C5. So that crack C5 is now blended with naphtha, and some other processes takes place that now gives us PMS. What Nigerians should be interested in today is that, is Port Harcourt Refinery producing AGO? The answer is yes. Is the old Port Harcourt Refinery producing kerosene, DPK? The answer is yes. Is it producing PMS today? The answer is yes. So we should reduce the concentration on what the processes are and look at the product that comes out. There is no refinery in the world that you have a CDU that produces PMS in one single tranche. No one produces PMS. Even Dangote Refinery, their CDU doesn't just produce PMS. But there is a product that comes out that is close to PMS because the requirement and the specification, what we call octane number in PMS, is very, very, you have to produce it to spec. Otherwise, it damages the vehicle. So that naphtha is further treated. So that treating of that naphtha, you are using the crack C4 from Indorama, so that is what they now call blended. But in all honesty, the refinery is working, and these products are all there. They are coming out as we speak.
Fantastic.
How civil servants want to survive? How workers want to survive? Bag of rice now 100k plus. How civil servants want to survive when the state governor don't want to implement the new minimum wage? It don't make sense. These state governors, they receive billions every month. Billions of naira they receive every month as allocation. Why they don't want to implement the new minimum wage? They will give them money. Instead, make they pay workers. They go use and how they do their own. So now NSC and TUSD they give backing to their workers for different states. When the governors don't want to implement the new minimum wage of 70k, when federal government approve, you understand? It don't make sense. All these state governors, all the money, the first subsidy removal when they remove, when they pay give on them. What now the reason they do? When they use all this money they do? We don't see anything. Thank God for this new tax bill now when we want put all of them for where they belong. You understand? And more could see how I want to the loot our treasury dry. May na go improve on a state, may na go improve production capacity so that every state could dey earn wetin they desire, wetin they consume. You understand?